1493, Christopher Columbus diary. Excerpts of Columbus in his diary as he writes to Dear Estimado España, referring to Spain. He writes in a letter to them, like the Philippians, that an uncertainty lingers throughout the New World, the West, that we are unbeatable, he writes in his diary. As you see, he uses the word unbeatable, he underlines it, as a nation, as Spain. So it's pretty obvious that Columbus, in his diary, points out that these guys, inhabitants, they're pathetic. 5D. He's referring to the indigenous folks. Now they fear us. One night, he was praying to God, he writes in his diary, and 3 of these indigenous tribal folks, they wanted to lay beside him like a robot, or they wanted to lay beside him, and they began to act like a straight up pure chicken hawks. So he puts no sign of patrol. And then he writes over here, we entered like that with no hassle. So it's pretty obvious, that these indigenous folks were annoying. He underlines chicken hawk. These guys couldn't see him minding his business, he writes. He says from 1 to 2 in the morning, they would shout, they would racket stuff, they'll hit doors, slam rocks together. Some of the Navajo locals, they will make up excuses to talk to him. He said he deemed them 15 steps behind Spain and Europe and Napoleon, Jesus. And he's writing he's keeping a memoir, a journal of this is his personal diary of Christopher Columbus, 1494, where he's focusing and he's telling us more about his experience. And this is day 4 with the Western civilization, supposedly, if that's what you want to call it. He's recording his experience with visiting the western side of the world. He writes they were using animals as terrorist tools, obstructing the pedestrian flow, harassing our soldiers, harassing our entertainers. He reminded them many times that their loss was greater than Spain's. They were in a civil war, he writes, at 1620. He says, I promised them that I would brandish them with gifts and food and shelter and women and ideas if they did one act of obedience towards Spain and Italy. And they didn't. They used everything against us, and they thought they were smarter than us. July 1st, 1494. Christopher Columbus. No sign of Jesus. Songs were sung by Spanish bands, and they acted very ostentatious. The inhabitants were obnoxious, and they were very immature towards our women. Around 1416, 3 Indians started performing the armpit maneuver, like natives, like the natives they were. Around 1420, they started shouting like pure hyenas and acting like animals, obstructing us, jumping on stage, throwing animals on stage. Around 1620, a civil war broke out amongst them, and they started fighting amongst themselves, drinking heavily, cursing in tribal and medieval languages, and practicing medieval arts. Christopher Columbus, July 3rd, 1494. I woke up next to an Indian next to me, passed out. 5D, overweight. He was pathetic and he smelled. Some of them wouldn't shower for days. I had to teach them about personal hygiene. Christopher Columbus. He continues to write, 1493, I saw no sign of the dictionary. I found that to be strange. How can a civilization survive with no dictionary? There's a form of old citizens with new names he puts, like medicine. I saw no sign of pharmacies, no sign of the vehicle or the wheel, only dogs. These guys are totally ignorant. And I saw them use children as queers. Naked children running around. The natives are very queer, he writes. For every one of us, there was 100 Indians. I only saw 1 to 4 Asians. China must hold next generation. 5D. He puts in comments, mainly queers. The folks I encountered here, the indigenous tribal folks of the West, I deemed them to be very tribal queers. Chicken hawk and 15 steps behind Spain. No sign of the dictionary or the wheel. Water very contaminated. No sign of clean, purified water. No sign of the machine, the purifier of water. On July 5th, 1720, 4 Indians started playing racket sounds. No sign of the fifth, the circle of fifths. Their music primitive. They haven't even reached the caveman sound. July 12th, 1493. I found these guys to be very obnoxious, native. They worship dogs. The children are 5D. They eat from the ground. No sign of clean water to bathe. Mental hygiene referred to inhabitants here in the so-called New World, which I just call just a bunch of old citizens with new disguises. And one night, Christopher Columbus writes around 10 o'clock, he was sleeping, and a group of them wanted to bathe with him and play around with him, like if he was a kid. And he writes, a group of Indians befriended him and started acting like pure asses, making noise, shouting, doing the armpit maneuver, being obstructive, banging on buckets, killing chickens for no reason, stealing chickens from his guests and from other Italians. Around 10:10 that same night, several times I had to remind them, keep it down. I was trying to sleep, and I wasn't into their medieval antics or culture of painting my face or playing with birds and putting their feathers on my attire. Around 11:24, one of my soldiers got in a fight with one of their chiefs just for looking at him. These guys are seriously loud, Spain. Their tunes are non-rhythmic. They seem to be tone deaf. No idea of harmony or solfeo. Hold Ross Giggins, Christopher Columbus, 1493. Day 15. I was walking around just enjoying the air, exploring the new land, when all of a sudden a group of medieval Indians, seniors, began to stare at me and wanted to befriend me by giving me gifts. I got in a fight with one of them, punching one of them in the nose. I felt bad because I knew that I was stronger than them. But I had to prove a point in order for the future to not experience these inhabitant ways or culture. Saving the future. Christopher Columbus, 1493.